Welcome to The Behaviorist with Work Wisdom, where we help you adopt high-performance mindsets, behaviors, communication, and culture. I'm your host, Sarah Colantonio. Our intention for the Behaviorist podcast is to share accessible, concrete practices that you can weave into your whole life to begin a shift toward joy and meaningful achievement. I have a quote on my office wall that sums up our topic today, but I'm not going to share it yet until the end.
Okay.
But Kedren, you named our episode today your to-don't list. So I have two questions.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Okay.
And why do you want to talk about it?
It's January and everyone is setting these intentions and they have these new goals for the year. And so usually they set a goal, and along with that goal is a to-do list of all the things that they're going to do in order to accomplish their goal, which is great. But I love what Anthony DeMello says, which is that transformation more readily comes from what we drop than what we do, than what we add in.
Okay.
So I think it's more liberating, it's more freeing to think about what aren't we going to do that's going to help us become this next version of ourselves. So rather than add something to our to-do list, it's what we drop.
Okay.
So that's why I thought it was funny to say a to-don't list.
Okay.
I probably saw it once on Instagram or something, a to-don't list. But I feel like personally, organizationally, in your couplehood, for your team, thinking through what are we not doing here? And what are we currently doing that we want to drop? And that is a more elegant way to get to the next better version of yourself.
Okay. So there's clearly a need for not just the to-do list, but the to-don't list.
Yeah, I almost every client I talk to every day continues to talk about Zoom exhaustion, burnout. You know, we see burnout data. It ranges everywhere from 42% of women saying that they're burned out on on McKinsey, to over 50% of all people saying that they're experiencing burnout on that most recent Indeed survey. So everyone's feeling burned out, and we're hearing quite a lot about how long meetings are, how back-to-back all their work is, how endless their work feels. And so that's also why I thought, let's talk about what not to do.
Okay. So what should we not do?
Well, I think you have to be strategic in what you decide not to do. You just can't wake up and say, I'm not going to do any of it, because that's not going to go well. But I think you can be, like I said, strategic in understanding what's meaningful to me, what is actually in the right gear. I often think about riding a bicycle and, am I in the right gear to get up this hill? Or am I, spinning and actually exerting more effort than I need to be? So there are a lot of tools that I use personally, and we use at Work Wisdom, to make sure that we are not exerting undue effort, because we don't have the time for that. We definitely don't have the money for it.
Right.
We're a little startup, and every stroke, every rotation needs to make sure that it's moving this bike forward. So I think a couple that I'm a big fan of, the first is a strategy screen. So that's a tool that we use when we do strategic planning for other organizations. And essentially it's a set of questions that help you make sure that this thing you're about to embark on, some new tactic, some new initiative, is actually going to help you win. So you can have these questions be in the form of a Likert scale to what degree will this help us win? To what degree will this revolutionize achievement? To what degree will this improve profitability? To what degree will this differentiate us from competitors? To what degree will this build our intellectual capital in specific ways? So you could score it 0, not at all, 10, a whole lot. Or you could just make it binary, yes, no.
Okay.
Does this fill in the blank? So if you run ideas through that and you get no's or you get low scores, it's a great way to engineer your activity so that you're not doing the things that are really having a low impact.
Is there a recommended size of a team or organization that could take advantage of this, or does it not matter?
I don't think it matters. I made it up from, I have a degree in policy science, as you know, from UMBC. Very proud of my alma mater, a master's in policy science. And we were taught quite a lot about decision rules. Okay. So it's a way to engineer your policy making or your decision making so that you have more optimal outcomes. And so I was doing a lot of strategic planning and feeling like the problem was more that organizations were not discerning what not to do. So I started creating these decision rules for organizations so that they could figure out what to say no to. Mm-hmm. So that every time a new idea came along, it wasn't, yeah, let's do that. But it was more, does it make it through our filter? So I guess I'm not answering your question, but I think you can use it for an individual or a team or an entire company. Yeah. Honestly, a community, even a whole community, could use a filter set of questions to help ensure that they are not embarking on something that's wasted effort. Nobody's got time for that.
No time for that.
No.
I love this because I'm an Enneagram 9. Mm-hmm. I'm a peacemaker. Mm-hmm. So I don't like conflict.
Oof.
I have a hard time with it.
Yeah.
I have to work really hard to put myself in the position. So if there's a strategy screen, if there's, structure to, or even like proof of like why I can say no to something, that makes me feel so good. Then it's not personal.
Yeah, you can point at that. It's the bad guy.
It's the strategy screen.
Yeah.
And then
you're still wonderful. Everybody still loves Sarah.
Right.
But it's that darn strategy screen.
Stinking.
That pesky strategy screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's not exactly science, right? Yeah. But it is criteria that I encourage teams to make sure that everyone has created the strategy screen together. Okay. So that there's buy-in, so that when someone comes up with some idea and it doesn't fit through the strategy screen, they still believe in the instrument. And so then they buy the outcome, which is didn't make the cut. It's not going to happen. So we're not doing that.
Is there a number, like a magic number, how many questions for the strategy screen?
No, really? I don't think so. I mean, I personally think it's nice if you can somewhat have them in your memory.
Okay.
So that as you are ideating and coming up with new possible tactics, you know what you're trying to engineer your tactics to fit through, So, but we've worked with organizations that have maybe 30.
Oh.
I can't remember how many the Work Wisdom one is, maybe 10, 15.
Yeah. I was thinking 15, 14 or 15. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
And you can just hold them loosely. Mm-hmm. We have a client and they have them on the back of their agendas when they have board meetings, so that the board can think through opportunities or solutions to problems and think about how they're fitting through the strategy screen. Or you can use it in a spreadsheet and then actually assign numbers to each of the, to what degree questions.
Yeah.
And then you can see what sinks to the bottom. The trick, of course, then, if it's a group of people, is who gets a vote.
Yeah.
So that needs to be thought through. But so when we're thinking about our to-don't list, I think whether it's you're an individual or you're thinking about it for your company or your team, thinking about what are the questions that I can use as filters that will help to drive my efforts towards winning. I think that's important. So that's one idea.
Okay, the strategy screen, and I know you, so you have more than one. I
got a million of them. A lot of ways. A lot of ways. I think values are great ways to discern what not to do. So if you have real clarity, again, as an individual, as a team, as a company, as a community, about what your deeply held beliefs are that guide your behavior. If there's something that's not in alignment with your values, I would say don't do it. Yeah. Put it on your to-don't list, So it takes a lot of thinking and prioritization. We use Rokeach values. Christy has done some really interesting collaboration with Autumn Woods. So we now have these wooden values boxes. And so teams or individuals can prioritize what their top values are and what their bottom values are, and then align tactics with that. So that's one way to decide what not to do.
Beautiful. And, when you were talking about the strategy screen it's good to have it like in your memory. I feel like values are really accessible, because I can think of our work wisdom values, kind of off the top of my head. So that can help in what to say yes to, what to say no to.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. I mean, so we have a document that lives on our Google Drive, and all year long we throw ideas into it. And it's called the Ideas Doc. And then we take a look at it when we come up on our adhocracy quarter. These are all other podcasts to explain all this stuff. But if something's not aligned with our values, then it immediately goes in the trash.
Yeah.
So it's a great way to make sure that we are not doing something that's not helping us become a more robust version of who we are.
I really like that tool.
Yeah, me too.
Using values. What else? What other recommendations do you have?
One that I like quite a lot for organizations is the use of archetype. So if we think through these unconscious forms that Plato and the ancient Greeks thought a lot about. They thought that even before we were born, we had some understanding of what narratives existed. So what a hero was like, what a warrior was like, what a caregiver was like, what an artist was like. So they thought that even before we were born, we came out of our mothers understanding what these different types were like. And then Carl Jung in the 1950s and 60s translated them into what we now use as archetypes. And so you see these in literature and film, and they're really helpful in thinking about which one of these identities most resembles me or my organization. And so often when a company lands on an archetype, it can help them very quickly know what not to do.
Yeah.
If an organization has landed on the visionary, there's certain things that might come up as possible tactics that it's like, no way, that's not what a visionary would do. That is what the everyman would do, or the citizen might do, maybe the hero, but the visionary, it's a different thing. So once you have a deep understanding of your archetype, it can help you know what not to do.
Okay.
I think when COVID first hit and we had a pretty deep understanding of what the work wisdom archetype was, and there were all these things that we thought, well, maybe if we do this, we could survive. If we could do this, we could survive. If we do this, we could survive. And we looked at our archetype and we said, well, actually, we're going to meditate. That's what our archetype would do. And it worked for us. It was weird, but we did it.
All right. So the strategy screen, using our values, utilizing archetypes. I know you have a couple more up your sleeve.
I definitely think that when we are crafting our to-don't list, we might want to use the work of Yuri, who wrote a great book called The Positive No. The positive no really requires that you know what you want. And so you really start by affirming what your yes is. Okay. So you might say to the person, this year I'm really focused on being fully present with my little kids. And so I would love to join your board, but I actually need to make sure that I'm home for dinner so that I can hang out with my kids. So I wish you all the best with your search for new board members, but I'm going to say no so that I can be sure that I'm really fulfilling my commitment to hanging out with my kids in the evening. So that's what the positive no might sound like. You start with what your big yes is, then you say no, then you repeat what your big yes is. So that's another thing. If we're going to have a to-don't list, we need to have constructive ways to say no. Constructive avoiding, learning how to actually avoid, is important as well. So thinking about, okay, I'm not going to be assertive here. I don't need to get what I want. I'm not going to exert effort to get this thing because it doesn't really matter. And I'm not actually going to spend any time trying to satisfy the interests of this other person either. So I'm going to avoid. So people hate that word, but that's technically what it is. It's not being assertive and it's not being cooperative. And just, it might look like empowering or delegating or just, I'm out, and being unapologetic about that. Constructive avoiding is another way. The big thing in the last couple of years that's been really popular, and a lot of our millennial teammates love this book, is essentialism. So essentialism's a lot like slowly and thinking about, well, what's really important here and what will actually move the needle on my joy and play to my strengths. And then what am I not going to do? Yeah. So being sure to align your behaviors, your calendar, your checkbook. Does anybody have a checkbook? I don't know, but the way you spend money on what's truly important to you. So I think just embracing the philosophy of what is essential in my life, and then I'm going to put my attention and my focus, my energy on that which is essential, and I'm going to drop the rest.
This sounds to me like emotional intelligence and the skill of like problem solving, where we problem solve when emotions are involved. Because I think sometimes when we are feeling fried, we're reactive and we're just like, I can't do it. But what I love about all of these tools is it helps us be more intentional. So we recognize the importance of the emotion and the feeling, but we pair it with making some choices based on what's in front of us.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I always think about splashing. I think about being in water.
Yeah.
And I think about what is splashing around, making the water wetter, versus what is that incredibly powerful swimmer who's doing those breaststrokes the whole way across the lake and barely causing a ripple in the water. And that's what I want. Yeah. And that's what I want for the people around me. Being incredibly economical and judicious with every exertion so that it's moving the water as you want to move it so that you can get across the lake. You know, when you said about it reminds you of emotional intelligence, it reminds me of the skill of impulse control or self-regulation, depending on which books you read. And so what am I not going to do?
Yeah.
What am I not going to do here so that I can ultimately get what I want? So I think almost everyone, if they sit down and think about maybe some of these practices that we've just talked about, but even their own life, they can think about, what am I going to take away and stop doing so that I get to this life well lived, what I really want. I guess it's like the uncarved block, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Of course, yeah. I hope it was helpful.
I'm so grateful to you for being part of this movement of helping others in the workplace to enhance their individual and collective team performance. I think this work is so important, and I hope, just like you, that it helps people figure out what they're not going to do for 2022.
Yeah.
Thank you, listeners, for downloading The Behaviorist. We hope you'll subscribe. You can reach out to us through our website, workwisdomllc.com, where you can enjoy Work Wisdom press and productions, ask questions, and even give suggestions of topics you'd like us to explore in future episodes. So I promised I would say what the quote is on my wall. And it is our custom to end with a quote. This is Coco Chanel. Elegance is refusal.